The debate format: each candidate will have 3 minutes in which to make an opening statement. Following the opening statements, the moderators will ask the candidates a series of questions on topics of regional interest. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer each question posed. Candidates can opt to use a portion of that time to rebut their opponent's answer to a previous question. The timekeeper, Jacqueline Dowland, will hold up colored cards to indicate how much time is left for a candidate response. A yellow card will indicate 15 seconds left, and a red card will indicate the response time has expired. Candidates who significantly exceed the allotted time will be advised by the moderators. Questions asked by the moderators will come from Herald staff members as well as from Herald readers who submitted questions via email prior to the forum. After the final question has been answered by both candidates, each candidate will have an opportunity to make a 2-minute closing statement. Some general guidelines: candidates will agree to respond to the question posed and not answer an unrelated issue or campaign theme. Candidates will agree to stick to the issues being discussed and refrain from comments about their opponent's character. Candidates are asked to remain seated throughout the forum. The audience is asked to be respectful and not interrupt the candidates during their responses. We'd like to start with Ms. Blankenship, your opening statement.
I would like to thank everybody for coming this evening and for the Killeen Daily Herald for putting on this forum. My name is Sandra Blankenship, and I'm running for Texas House of Representatives for District 54. As many of you who know, I am not a politician, and making speeches is not my strong suit. My decision to run for office was not made lightly, nor is it an easy one. I decided to run because I'm tired of people running for office who say they are running for their own personal gain. People who say they represent us, but after they're elected, they put themselves and their party ahead of the needs of the people in the communities. As I said, I'm not a politician. I'm a woman that learned about life and responsibility growing up on the family farm. I'm a mother who raised her son while working and going to school. I'm a wife of a veteran that made Bell County home over 20 years ago. I'm a nurse that cares for the medically fragile children in our community. And I am a citizen who's had enough of politicians representing themselves and not us. I learned very early about following through and taking responsibility on the family farm. When you didn't do what you say you're going to do, you didn't eat. It was that simple. But here's the thing. When politicians don't do what they say they're going to do, we still get to eat, or most of us. But here's the thing. Eventually, we start doing without. We do without good roads and bridges that support our economy. We do without proper health care coverage for all of our Texans. We do without a high-quality education for our children and grandchildren. And we do without a clean environment for our children and grandchildren. I will do what I say I will do. I will work to ensure that all Texans have a basic standard of health care. 5 million Texans are currently without coverage in the state. That is the highest in the nation, and that is unacceptable. I will make sure our children have a quality education, and charter schools will not get us there. I will fight to fully fund our public schools and give our children and grandchildren a chance to compete in a global economy. We need a diverse economy with good paying renewable energy jobs so that everyone has a basic standard of living. So a car payment will not bankrupt you and you do not have to work 2 to 3 jobs or more just to make ends meet. I do not intend to enrich myself in Austin. My nest is fully feathered. This is not a stepping stone for me. My life is rich and fulfilling as it is. I intend to vote for you. I intend to fight for you, and not for special interests. I would like to thank all of you again for coming out this evening and showing your commitment to the future of Texas. I am asking for your vote to make sure Texas has a bright and prosperous future.
Thank you. Mr. Cosper, your opening statement.
I too would like to thank everyone for coming out and taking the opportunity to hear our opinions and what our vision for the region is, as well as Killeen Daily Herald and for the Marriott for hosting this event. You always do a great job, and thank you for that. I am Scott Cosper, and I am I'm Killeen resident. I've lived here all of my life. I married Christy Cosper, who is also a Killeen resident. She is an educator at the Career Center here in KISD. We have 2 beautiful daughters, Caitlin and Taylor, that are 11 and 13 years old. And so I am concerned about our future for our area. I want to make sure that our economy and our quality of life continues to grow and get better here in the area. I am a custom home builder and a small developer. So I am a small business person that understands what it takes to make a business work and what it is like to have to look out after your employees and be responsible for other people. It's been my honor to serve since 2000 when I was first elected to the Killeen City Council. Following that, I served 9 years as a council member, the last 3 of those as mayor pro tem. And this past June, I finished my first term as mayor, serving 2 years as the mayor of Killeen. Killeen has been a phenomenal place to work and serve over the last many decades. In the last census decade, we grew by more than 46%, and we continue to grow at a very impressive clip currently. With that, we have had the opportunity, as well as challenges, to keep up with that growth, keeping up with the infrastructure, keeping up with the roads, improving our parks, building a water park, a convention center, a regional airport, and many, many other things that I'll talk about as we get farther into the night. But it has been a tremendous honor to work with the citizens of Killeen, many councils, as well as county, state, and federal officials to do good things here in Central Texas, most of all supporting our veterans and active duty military and their families from Fort Hood. Growing up in the shadow of Fort Hood, I have learned that freedom does not come for free, and that there are many sacrifices that are associated with that, and we need to do everything that we can to provide the best education, the best quality of life, and the best support for those men and women that are protecting our freedoms. As it relates to District 54, we have a huge rural interest in Lampasas County, and I want to make sure that our water and property rights are protected. Then we do everything that we can to make sure Second Amendment rights are protected as well. So it is my honor to be here with you tonight to be able to share with you some of my experience and vision for District 54. Thank you.
Thank you both. We're going to rotate who responds first. So in this instance, I'll ask you the first question, and the next question will be Ms. Blankenship, and so that way you'll kind of try and balance it out. First question is, what are your top 3 issues and why are they important?
Top 3 issues are to support Fort Hood, support Texas A&M University, and to make sure that we have good schools in Central Texas.
Thank you. Ms. Blankenship?
Oh, my top 3 is to make sure that we have good education. We need to fully fund our public schools. We need to make sure everyone has a basic standard of living, and we need to make sure everyone has a basic standard of health care. And we need to improve our infrastructure and bring it up to the 21st century.
Thank you.
Our first question goes to Ms. Blankenship. This is coming from one of our readers. The state budget is the most important work product of a legislative session. What makes you a better choice to hammer out a budget that will benefit District 54 and all Texans?
Well, my mother raised me as her grandmother, or my grandmother raised her, and that was a Depression era type education. I am not only fiscally responsible, but I would just say I'm extremely frugal. I know how to balance a budget, and I know how to invest in the future.
Mr. Cosper, same question. You need it repeated?
Yes, please.
Okay. The state budget is the most important work product of a legislative session. What makes you a better choice to hammer out a budget that will benefit District 54 and all Texans?
Absolutely. My experience as a small business owner, as well as being on the city council, serving as in multiple capacities as council member, mayor pro tem, and mayor, for 11 budgets that we have had to work through, has given me the experience to have to prioritize and weigh out what the difference is in needs and wants, and to identify what the unmet needs are that have to be pushed down the road and what the ones are that have to be addressed immediately. In addition to that, we have recognized the need to support our first responders, to be hard on crime, and to be able to provide them the resources that they need to provide the safety and fight crime here in the area. So that experience that I've gained working with the city, the Chamber of Commerce, and many other organizations, Council of Governments, and the Metropolitan Planning Organization for TxDOT, which we have brought more than $1.5 billion here to Central Texas as a result of service on that board, definitely gives me the experience to be able to serve at the state level and to be able to make a difference and to help them balance the budget, which is required by the state for us to balance the budget each year. And so I am ready to engage those challenges, identify the priorities, and work to make sure that we put our best foot forward to serve the citizens of District 54.
Thank you.
Thank you. What is the most pressing need for the state, and how would you fund it, given the state's limited tax revenue? I'll start with you, Mr. Cosper.
I think the biggest need for the state currently is our security. We need to make sure that we secure our borders. We need to make sure that we know who's coming across our borders and what their intentions are. Last session, the state made a significant investment in border security, and we need to continue that effort, because whenever we do not know who's coming across our borders and we do not secure our country, it has a very adverse effect on our community.
Thank you. Ms. Blankenship?
And for me, I think the biggest issue right now is healthcare. We are 10 billion of our tax dollars are going to other states like California, and we need to bring that back to this state. And you want to ask how does this impact you? Well, it means higher cost to you, because when you have citizens that can't pay for their ER visits, when they can't pay for doctor visits, and they can't pay for a prescription, that cost gets put onto you. The companies who provide health care will protect their profits by pushing the costs onto you and adding a bit more because they can. You think I'm joking, and I have 2 words for you, and it's called EpiPen. Every Texan deserves a chance to be healthy. There are 5 million people in Texas, and it's the highest in the country, where these are hard-working Texans that deserve access to preventative care. Yeah, and now the legislature just cut funding to special needs children, and that means children who require speech therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy will have to do without. These children need these services to have the most fulfilling life possible. They need to have the chance to walk and to feed themselves and have an optimum life expectancy. They need and deserve access.
Thank you.
Our next question involves leadership. Ms. Blankenship, we'll start with you. What leadership skills do you possess that will help you get things done in the state capitol?
As a nurse, I've been entrusted with the very lives of medically fragile children. When there's a critical situation, I know best how to direct a team of experts to ensure the health and wellness of my patient. I will take as good care of the people of this district that I do of my patients. I will work for the people of this district, and that means more town halls in Lampasas, Kempner, and Killeen, and a few banquets down in Austin. I will implement common sense ideas with a focus on improving the lives of every Texan in District 54. We've seen what poor leadership gets us. We have shown, as a city councilman and mayor of Killeen, when you create and ignore problems like the city budget deficit and take no responsibility and then find ways to benefit yourself. That is not how I will run.
Mr. Cosper, you need the question repeated?
About leadership?
Yes.
No, sir, I've got that one covered.
Okay.
My leadership experience began when I was serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission in the mid-1990s, as well as serving on the Chamber of Commerce Board. That led to service on City Council that I've already mentioned, but I've also served on other boards, such as the Central Texas Council of Governments, the TxDOT Policy Board, known as KTEMPO, the Heart of Texas Defense Alliance, the Second Runway Task Force that planned for the arrival of a second runway whenever the employments reach such a level that we need to do that, or that we have other military assets that may be looking to come to Killeen needing to use that space. We have planned for that. It is in the Federal Registry, it is in the airport layout plan, and it's in our master plan. I have served on virtually every board that has a significant impact in Central Texas, to include workforce and many others, and with that experience, I have no doubt that it makes me well-rounded and prepared to serve District 54 on day one.
The next question has to do with education. The current District 54 representative has made it a priority to streamline the state's standardized testing process. What changes would you pursue along the lines of standardized testing?
There is no doubt that testing is being overdone currently. And Mr. Jimmy Don Aycock has done a fabulous job leading as the chairman of the Education Committee, bringing forward new ideas and trying to look out for the needs of not only our children in District 54, but all over the state. But what is definite is we are over-testing the children. We are stressing some of the young children out with those tests, and we're not allowing the teachers the flexibility and the ability to teach to the individual needs of the children who may be lacking in certain areas. Instead, they're having to focus on the test and the curriculum that leads to that test, and I think that sets our children back. We need to make sure that our school boards have the flexibility to work with the principals and the teachers to provide the curriculum that gives the best education to our children, to prepare them for the workforce and the future after they leave public ed and they move on to college and into their careers and their lives. The workforce that they are moving into is what they need to have the opportunities to be able to get into through a career center, through early college programs, or through the two-step program between CTC and Texas A&M, which I think now they're calling it, they've got a new name for it, but it's the opportunity for people to get a full four-year degree for about $17,000 here locally. That's done nowhere else, and that is the result of decades of leadership from community leaders who have pulled together and said, we can do better. We must do better. And they brought to fruition CTC many decades ago, and I see the chancellor here tonight. And then a 30-year dream came to fruition when Texas A&M was built and brought to fruition here in Central Texas, and that is going to be a crown jewel in our crown of successes. It's going to provide research for renewable energy, it's providing medical research, it's providing certifications where people can go into the workforce and have the opportunity to make a great living here in Central Texas, where affordability and quality of life are outstanding.
Thank you. Ms. Blankenship.
Okay, I'm so glad that my opponent has actually brought on my policies. Used to be it was like the schools are fine and, you know, well, they'll be fine. But I'm glad he's picking up that point because I saw your online video and I don't think that adequate funding is good enough. And as our Texas House Supreme Court said, that it was minimum and that was good enough. Yeah, I don't think adequate or minimum is good enough for funding. I think we need to fully fund our public schools. We are siphoning our tax dollars to pay for these charter schools that have been proven to be at most minimum to a basic public school, and more often than not, they are worse. We need to fully fund our public schools and not for-profit charter schools. We need to raise the basic student allotment to at least meet the minimum average of the country. I am maintaining contact with teachers and administrators so I know what their needs are, and I'm in contact currently with teachers associations, and I am contacting school districts, and I will continue to do that down in Austin. We need to restore school funding, not cut it more. We need to hire qualified teachers and pay them appropriately. We need to allow our children the freedom to learn and to stop teaching to the test. The test should not be used as a punitive measure for teachers or for school districts. We need to allow our children the freedom to learn. And the charter schools there are certain charter schools that serve at-risk children that would be beneficial to, and those are run by teachers and parents. Those I will support, but not these for-profit charter schools. So I am right in line with Mr. Aycock, and yes, I will follow in his footsteps and do the best I can to make sure we fully fund our public schools.
Thank you.
May I rebut that? I have made it very clear since the primary election all the way to date that I've said we need to put our best foot forward early whenever we fund public education, and that we need to make sure that we are not over-testing the children and that we're giving teachers the flexibility they need. That's why I'm endorsed by teachers associations, Parent PAC, and many other educational organizations that are very involved at the state level for making sure that public education is taken care of, and I am honored to have those endorsements.
Thank you. I think as a point of rebuttals, though, we'll have them come with the next question so you can use part of the time on the next question in general. I don't know if we made that clear in advance, but thank you.
Sticking with education, this is for you, Ms. Blankenship. The state and school and districts have been under fire to help special education students get the right education, and some districts are lagging. How would you solve this problem?
Well, we want to make sure that they follow the recommendations of the group that came in to the school board. And I said they need leadership training, and they need to follow the examples, and these children need to be supported. As a nurse, I was actually in these schools with my patients at times, and they need to have these special services, the ones for occupational and physical therapy. They need them available to them, and that means funding. They need to be funded and they need to have training so they know exactly what they're doing, so these children can reach their optimum level.
Mr. Cosper, do you need a repeat on the question, or?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
As a father of a special needs child, I understand that there are certain things where they need special considerations and they need to be able to be considered differently than others. But that is not an issue that needs to be hammered out or the details worked out at the state level. That is where you need to give your school boards and your principals the flexibility to do what they need to do to make the decisions to take care of their children. We certainly have very capable folks in KISD and all the other school districts in District 54. I think that they do a good job of identifying problems, and as those problems are identified, we have seen that recently, where they have stepped up and they've made a difference in trying to address concerns that were brought forward to them. And so local control works, and we need to allow it to have the opportunity. If there is specific funding or specific considerations that the state needs to do, that needs to be brought forward to us by the citizens and the school board on what those issues are. But certainly local control needs to prevail in those matters.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another education question. This one's from one of the readers. She said, with the growing number of single-parent and dual-earning households in the area, after-school programs for children are needed. What will either candidate do to assist in funding after-school programs in the district? And I think she probably means districts statewide in this.
Yeah.
That's me, right?
Yes, it is, please.
That is why I continue to support organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, who provide those after-school programs. The YMCA also does a very good job with those, and I've been very supportive of them as well. We need to make sure that those folks have the support from the community and from the school districts to be able to continue those programs that work very, very well. The City of Killeen very uniquely provided funding for some of those programs whenever I was a council member, and it helped thousands of children after school that had single parents, that either the spouses were deployed overseas or that they were simply a single parent back here at home. But we have addressed those issues by working with organizations like Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA. There's other opportunities to address those issues, but those are the two best ones that I know.
Thank you. Ms. Blankenship?
Yeah, this comes right back to funding. When you have the basic student allotment raised up, there can be money available to make sure that the after-school programs are available, and making sure that when you have some of these more challenging schools, you can actually make sure that there are services available after schools and within the school district themselves, not just for the children, but for the parents of the children too. Like counselors, social workers, we need to make sure that these challenged schools are supported as fully as we can make them.
Thank you.
Sticking with Ms. Blankenship, what do you think is the most important area, or sorry, the most important issue in education?
Making sure that our children are educated enough to be able to compete in a global economy. You know, they need to be able to, be able to be prepared for college and what the future is going to bring. And if they're not going to be going to college, they need to be prepared to, be able to step into a position.
Mr. Cosper?
Absolutely. So the children are set up for success, so that as they're going through the grades of public education, that they're getting the education that they need to move forward and to advance, and to be able to prepare themselves for whatever their career path is going to be whenever they enter the workforce. For many of those, as I had mentioned earlier, it's the early college program that is provided through CTC for them to be able to get ahead and actually graduate from high school with an associate's degree and 2 years of credit that gets them closer to having that 4-year or master's degree that they want. And then whenever you look at the Career Center that they have, it provides so many opportunities for those kids that may not be on the path to academia. Rather, they are looking for certifications in welding or in building trades or mechanical engineering, or even the medical services are also covered out at the Career Center. That is a fabulous facility that provides opportunities for children to be able to leave high school with certifications that are meaningful and get high-paying jobs without having to have that 4-year degree. It creates diversity within education, and I am proud of what KISD is doing through those different venues.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is about transparency. How important is transparency in government And what will you do to make sure residents are fully informed about state issues? I'll start with you, Mr. Cosper.
Transparency is absolutely imperative in all forms of government. That's why I have fought for that within the city of Killeen as I've served as a council member and then later as a mayor. We record all of our meetings. We stream that on the internet. We make that available to everybody. Our council meetings are televised. We were the first entity in the area to televise our meetings. We have made it a point to make sure that our agendas are posted early where people can see what it is that's on the agenda. We open our meetings up to people that want to come in and speak to us through citizens petition. I published my personal cell phone number as a council member and as a mayor, so people had no problem ever getting a hold of me. They didn't want to email me, or they didn't want to leave a message, or they didn't want to go through city staff. They had a direct contact to me, and I will be exactly the same through the state government. It is my intent to continue to be involved in the public as I have been for decades, and to continue being available and open with all of the constituents within District 54.
Thank you, Mr. Cosper. Ms. Blankenship.
Oh, transparency is paramount, and you actually need to be able to educate the public on what you are doing at all steps. That means you need to have town halls, and you need to make them open to everybody, and you need to inform the public of what is going on. Transparency is paramount.
Thank you.
We're sticking with that topic. Ms. Blankenship, this one's for you first. Killeen City Hall has had problems with transparency in recent years, the most serious of those lapses being a failure to tell the residents and council members about declining finances. How do you think the city administrators could have handled it better?
Okay. It's important to remember that budgets are not originated from the city council. They're passed by the council, but they come from the executive branch of the city government. Okay, the head of the executive branch of the government is the Killeen mayor and the city manager. And this means that any way you look at it, we have some fingerprints on the budget. If Mr. Cosper was meeting with the city manager every week, week after week, it should have been glaringly obvious that the budget was not being balanced. The first mistake came through a mistaken assumption that the rising property values would handle rises in expenditures. That did not happen. The second mistake was based increasingly on large spending decisions on that faulty first assumption. Property tax values didn't rise as fast as expenses did. The money that was expected to be there wasn't. That might not have been an issue for only 1 year had they reacted and changed how the city projected their revenues. But they didn't. Under Mr. Cosper, they doubled down again and again using the city's reserve funds to make up the difference. And they did it again and again. They did it for 3 years, and they are using up the city's backup funds while claiming all was well. Now the city has run into a wall. No more funds exist to cover up the lack of revenue. There are still worthy public work projects that the city has financially committed to, and they need to be paid for. No plans have been made to find new ways to increase the revenue to meet expenses within the next budget year, already looming like a dark cloud on the horizon. And Mr. Cosper, who's quick to take credit when things are good, all of a sudden has very little say on the budget deficit. He claimed that the city was following policy with the Q&A and the Herald over the summer, but what really happened is that he sold the council and citizens of Killeen on a false bill of goods and gambling the city's savings and budget on an economic theory he thought would make him look good by not having to raise taxes at all.
Mr. Cosper, I guess I don't need to repeat the question.
No, sir, I'll be glad to answer that question, but I need to clear a few things up here. We are not like the federal government. We do not have an executive branch, and we do not have a legislative branch. We have a city council. Let me back up a little bit. The city has a document called our city charter. That's our constitution for the city of Killeen. And what that document says is that the mayor is the ceremonial head of the city and shall preside over council meetings and be the head of the city for ceremonial purposes at meetings and such as that out in public. The council's job, per the charter, is to govern. What that means is the council adopts the budget. The council sets policy and procedures. The council makes decisions and amends the budget. all expenditures are approved through the council. The city manager brings forward a budget that is built with department heads and other staff, and it's called a preliminary budget. When it's presented to the city, it goes from being a staff document that the mayor has nothing to do with, it becomes the council's document. And we go through that document and we talk about what are the things that are included that we support, that we don't support, that are added and need to be added. That document is absolutely adopted by the council. The last budget I voted on was in 2011 for the 2012 budget. That year we had a $4 million surplus and a 28% fund balance. So I am proud of the budget that we adopted at that time. However, I am very involved in the process, and with that, we adopted two budgets that were within all of our procedures and protocols, and it came in within our fund balance policy. Everybody likes to talk about the crisis the city has. How many of you realize that we have $17 million in untouchable funds at the city of Killeen? And that number has been higher than that for decades. 17 million in our savings account.
The next question has to do with the military. What can you do at the state level to make lives better for active duty military families in the Killeen area? Mr. Cosper.
Well, as a council member, I worked with the military in many capacities to improve access through gates, to improve the congestion and the safety on US 190 along the main gate corridor, to work with them to bring to fruition the Robert Gray Joint Use Airport. $117 million worth of federal funds were invested in that terminal and the apron space for us to be able to not only bring jet service to our community, but to keep from losing service altogether. We were going to lose the service that was being provided at Municipal Airport, and as a result of that, we worked with officials from Fort Hood's garrison commander all the way to our senior elected officials in Washington and the FAA executives to be able to get a law passed to be allowed to have that airport used jointly between the military and the civilian. It's a great partnership. There's many other opportunities for us to do things like that. I worked with them to plan for the second runway. Hopefully someday we'll bring an air wing in here, or we'll bring some heavy lift Army air capabilities in here that we currently don't have that can be permanently stationed here. I've served on the Heart of Texas Defense Alliance and worked with them to make sure that that alliance is a liaison between the civilian community and the military, to make sure that each knows what the other one is saying, because they use very different language. And to make sure that we're pulling in the same direction, all the communities with Fort Hood, because they deserve that. I also was the secretary of the Military Mayor's Council. That is made up of 15 communities statewide. And your question was referencing statewide to continue what we were doing in those efforts. There's a $150 billion asset in Texas, and it's called our military. They deserve to be protected, and the Military Mayor's Council, which was founded in Killeen, they had their inaugural meeting called and convened here in Killeen, has worked to create ways to add military value to those installations, to be able to turn a loan into a grant that gives $30 million in the last 2 years to the communities to be able to invest into the military area. $5 million of those dollars were invested at Robert Gray Airport to be able to upgrade the radar systems that not only work the airport itself, but it also has to do with the traffic going on out in the training areas. So I am prepared to serve immediately and represent our military at the state level.
Thank you, Ms. Blankenship. The question was, what can you do at the state level to make lives better for active duty military families here?
Our veterans wrote a blank check up to and including their lives in service to this country, and we owe it to them to make sure they get all of the benefits that they were promised. We have underfunded state veteran service, and that needs to stop. I would pass a service tax on on alcohol and cigarettes to fully fund and act the Hazelwood Act, and I defy anyone to say that that is a bad idea. Yeah, we need to make sure we have a support structure. It needs to be upgraded around Fort Hood to keep Fort Hood viable and growing, and that means well-paying jobs. We need aerospace and defense companies to refurbish military equipment using local folks to upgrade and update defense equipment before it can be shipped off. We have a bonanza on Fort Hood with thousands of formerly trained military personnel. And what they're doing, they're not able to jump into jobs in this district. We need renewable energy jobs here. We need to build solar panels and windmills. We need companies to install and support that services. We need it here, and then we can ship those products and energy to the country and to the world. We're in an ideal location for that right now. Here in Hill Country, we're set to surpass Germany for wind power generation. The renewable energy economy is exploding right now. 1/3 of our energy is coming from renewable resources. We need to be a part of that. We need those future innovative jobs in this district because everyone deserves a basic standard of living. And we need jobs, fulfilling jobs that will stay in this district.
Next question is along those lines. Do you think there are an adequate number of good-paying jobs available in the clean area for soldiers who are getting out of the Army? And are there steps at the state level you can take to increase the number of those jobs?
Yes, there are steps that we can take at the state level. We can encourage these manufacturers to come in. We can encourage the DOD and contractors and encourage renewable energy companies to come into our district. And we need to make that incentives available to them, to that area. My husband is overseas because he wasn't able to step into a good paying job here.
Mr. Cosper, same question?
There are many good paying jobs here, but there's room for improvement, and we need to find ways to provide more of them. A few of those ways is to continue doing what Central Texas College is doing. They are training veterans that are exiting the military to give them the technical trades that they need to be able to acquire those high-paying jobs. We have seen a huge increase in our medical facilities in Central Texas, from the Darnell Regional Medical Center to expansions at Metroplex, the creation of Seton Hospital, the expansions at Scott and White to include McLean's Children's Hospital, which I serve on the board of, providing excellent health care to the children of Central Texas. We've got the Biomedical Science Center out over in Temple that KSD partners with. KSD is the biggest partner in that Bioscience Center, and that is providing the opportunity for people to get not only certified but high master's levels degrees, to be able to do research in the medical industry, to provide health care needs to Central Texas, and to improve the quality of life for all of our Central Texans. It is a great opportunity, and we need to continue looking for ways to partner with them and expand what they are already doing right here in Central Texas. It's a model that many other communities are looking at, and they want to know how they can get in on the great progress that Central Texas is currently enjoying.
Thank you. The next question has to do with water. In general, what would you do to ensure adequate drinking water supply for our area and the state? Start with you, Mr. Cosper.
Well, we need to ensure that we have functional groundwater districts, and that we protect the rights that are currently regulated by the Brazos River Authority and Region G. We are blessed that we have 2 surface water lakes in the area, and that we have aquifers that contain tremendous amounts of water. We in Bell County have Clearwater District that regulates our groundwater and provides us with conservation efforts and shows us ways that we can do things that will be meaningful to protect that. But there's other areas that do not have those underground water districts, and we need to work to encourage them to provide those districts to monitor and to watch for things that are impacting those districts. Another thing that we did that was very creative, many other cities have never even thought of this, but we have, at the city of Killeen, implemented just last year while I was mayor, a water reuse system where we're taking the effluent water that's leaving the sewer plant that previously was dumped into the river and it went all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, and we had no right to draw that water out. We have that water that is now being put into a pipe. It's watering our golf course. There's many other major users that want into that source of water to be able to use it for irrigation purposes. What that will mean for us is the ability to provide water in the future when water becomes more scarce for at least 1,200 new homes here in Central Texas as a result of that. It's just smart thinking and good planning. It's part of the master plans that many of the previous councils have worked hard to develop, thinking forward about what is the future of Central Texas, what is it that we need to be thinking about and doing to protect that water. So that is approximately 6 million gallons a day that we are now capturing and using in a productive way that provides cheaper water for irrigation, but it also provides insurance for our future that we will have adequate water.
Thank you. Ms. Blankenship?
Yeah, okay, right now, we need all districts to be on the same level. Right now, at the Chisholm Trail water, going down to Georgetown, they have no representation. There's a whole section that is not represented, and Georgetown is taking the water from Stillhouse, and they will not give back to the south side. So we need to make sure that the south side of Killeen is actually represented on the Chisholm Trail Water Board, and they're not at this time, and that needs to be addressed at the legislative session. They're two different systems, and we need to make sure everyone's on equal footing, because we can't have someone digging a well on one side of Williamson County and nobody being able to do it on the other side. We need to make sure that we have water retention systems. We need to make sure that we have, when we have these floods, we need to be able to store that water. When the aquifer's already down 25 to 30% at this point, and it's going to get worse. So we need to be able to store the water that we have during the flood times, and we need to make sure we have rainwater collection systems. And we could probably make sure that those rainwater collection systems are not taxed.
The next question is on health. It's from a Harker Heights reader. Will you support and/or submit legislation to expand Medicaid to help those who cannot afford the constantly increasing cost of state-regulated health insurance plans? And if so, what would your plan entail?
So I think I'm first one on that one. I want to go back to the last question and point out that Georgetown water that's drawing water from Stillhouse Lake, that is a surface water pool of water. They had their water rights the same way we got ours, through the Brazos River Authority. And if you go back and look at the contracts, that water was actually contracted before the city of Killeen's water was contracted. And that is a surface water pool of water that's being drawn out. And I don't like it any more than anyone else that water is being drawn from there, but they have a right to it. The Chisholm Trail issue has nothing to do with that surface water. That has to do with water in the aquifer. That is, as I said earlier, we need to have water districts that are local and regulating the water within those aquifers. Chisholm Trail is all about aquifer water, and it has nothing to do with Stillhouse Lake. Those are completely different issues, and although they have been acquired because of management issues or whatever, the board chose to allow Georgetown to take them over, and as much of a travesty as that is, that's what had happened. But it needs to be very clear that Georgetown is not taking water that is allocated to us. Our allocated water is protected, and I will make sure that it continues to be protected. As for the Medicaid, I think that Obamacare is absolutely the worst thing that has happened to our medical industry. It has created entitlements. It has driven the cost of health care up. What we need to do is have more competition within our medical insurance opportunities. We need to be able to cross state lines and be able to be more competitive and let the markets control those health cares. We don't need more entitlements. Entitlements are bankrupting our country, and I do not support doing that.
Ms. Blankenship, the Medicaid question?
Oh boy, this may take more than 2 minutes. All right. There's a coverage gap of about 1 million hardworking Texans in this state, and by expanding the Affordable Care Act, they would actually be covered. These are hardworking Texans that make more than $3,900 a month, or a year, sorry. They make more than $3,900 a year, but less than $35,000 a year. That's a big gap. I'm sorry, $24,000 a year. They work hard. They deserve access to preventative care. And when they do get access to preventative care, we need to get that $10 billion worth of tax money that's going to other states, need to bring it back here. And when we do that, we have access to expanding our medical jobs. There's medical coverage, we have more doctors, more people being covered. Right now, there are 4.4 million people enrolled on the Medicaid plan in this state. 3.3 million of them are children. Texas Medicaid only pays 42 cents on the dollar. The federal government picks up the rest of it. And If we do not expand Medicaid in this state, that $6.2 billion subsidy is going away. We need to expand it, because if we do not, then the cost, people are going to be going to the ER instead of going to a preventative doctor, and our costs are going to skyrocket. Now, going across state line is not a good idea, because then the insurance companies can do what they will when they go across state lines. They will go across state lines and get the cheapest, most awful plan there was, like before the Affordable Care Act, where I was paying $350 a month for an 80-20 plan. I paid 80. I had to fight the insurance company to actually kick over 20. This is awful. We need to make sure that these laws are followed.
Thank you. And so one of the questions as we're coming to a close here was from a Colleen reader who said, do you support the presidential candidate of your party? Why or why not? Mr. Cosper?
Well, you know, I knew that question was coming, and I think that unfortunately, both of the candidates have flaws, and they're probably not the best that our country has to put forward. But, you know, I'm inclined to support the party, and I will do that. We have great people within our party, like our congressman and former Judge John Carter, and we have other folks that continue, like Don Buckingham, and we've got a great governor of this state, and I intend to support the party. But again, you know, they've both got flaws, and I see that.
Thank you. Ms. Blankenship?
Oh, I unequivocally support the party nominee, my party's nominee. She is the most qualified and has the most experience. Yeah, I support her.
Just a reminder, this isn't really an audience participation sport. Just a reminder. So were you finished? You were sort of cut off.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, I support my candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That pretty much brings us to a close. So each of you has 2 minutes for a wrap-up statement. And let's see, I believe we start with Mr. Cosper because we started with Ms. Blankenship the last time. So.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. It's been an honor to be here with you and to share some ideas and to talk to you about what's going to be important to District 54 and some of the things, some of the experiences that I've had in the past. And I want you to know that I am endorsed by Jimmy Don Aycock, our current incumbent. I am endorsed by local and statewide law enforcement organizations, 14 retired generals and sergeant majors. I have the experience to move District 54 forward and to do a good job creating quality of life, safety, protecting our community, good jobs, research opportunities. Through my experience working with Children's Hospital, Texas A&M University, with military out at Fort Hood, leadership and planning our future, talking about what it is that we can do to add military value to their installation, to make sure that Fort Hood stays the power projection platform for the entire United States Army, not just for the state of Texas, and to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to provide the support for those veterans that are leaving the military with good education and good job opportunities. Our community has been blessed to be growing more than 10%, been recognized for being one of the fastest growing communities, top 10 in the nation for affordability, for quality and affordability. We've also been able to see phenomenal growth within the medical industry that I mentioned earlier, within the retail sector. We have been able to acquire more than $1.5 billion for roadways on Highway 195, used to be known as the Highway of Death. For Highway 190, the busiest piece of roadway in all of Bell County. Now we're looking forward to an interstate designation that will begin right here in Central Texas, and ultimately it will go all the way across the state, east to the west. I want to express a little bit of dismay with something at this forum tonight. I asked at the beginning of all of this if there would be any questions provided, if there would be anyone that were allowed to know what the questions were, and I was told no. I have sat here tonight and watched my opponent read her answers word for word in order with bullet points on all of her notes. If you don't believe it, come get it.
Well, that's what preparation is.
Let me just interrupt for a second. We gave you all the topics. They were printed in the ad. They were printed in the paper. So she reads the paper, I think. So
Yes.
that's
Veterans.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt, so go ahead with your closing
Yeah,
statement.
nobody
You
gave
have
me
2
the
minutes.
questions on- All right. We need a very careful management of the Texas budget, which will be $1 billion less this year due to some ill-advised tax cuts to big corporations and big businesses. We need to stop trying to kick the can down the road by coming up with politically expedient quick fixes. I am proposing we utilize the Economic Stabilization Fund until the economy rebounds as anticipated. When you have money in the bank, you need to utilize it to the best advantage instead of mortgaging your future. We need to tackle the big picture and do what is best for all Texans by making sound decisions. We should be tackling the substantial balance our comptroller, Mr. Hagar, says we're going to end the fiscal year with. We should be using that for the highway fund instead of our sales tax revenue growth. When we use our sales tax revenue growth, we're damaging the future of economic growth in our great state. We need to have fiscal responsibility and accountability. One of the first things I will do is make sure we get our $10 billion tax dollars that are being sent to other states like California. We need them back to increase our economy and expand healthcare jobs. It will allow us to provide better healthcare coverage, lower pressure on property tax costs, and reduce insurance premiums. We need to hold insurance companies accountable and stop them from raising premiums and reducing benefits because they feel their billions in profit are just not good enough. Our schools need to be fully funded, not minimally or adequately, fully. I will follow Jimmy Don Aycock's path and fight for our schools. Educating our children is a sound investment for the future of our great state. The basic allotment per student needs to be raised at least to the average of the country. Our infrastructure needs to be brought up to 21st century standards. With good infrastructure, we get good jobs, good economy, and that results in more money in your pocket. We need to enact policies that will encourage more economic diversity for our state and in turn will bring well-paying, diverse jobs to this district so that experienced personnel from our district will have an opportunity to step into good-paying, fulfilling jobs. I am Sandra Blankenship, and I'm asking you again for your vote and your support. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Now, we want to thank both of you for being here. We want to thank the audience. So both of the